The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie stillness over the vast expanse of the Giza Plateau. Dr. Eleanor Langford, had spent the last several months overseeing one of the most exciting archaeological projects of my career, uncovering a newly discovered chamber beneath one of the ancient pyramids. My team and I had been working tirelessly, scraping away centuries of sand and debris, our efforts driven by the knowledge that we were on the verge of uncovering something monumental. But that night, something far beyond my understanding would surface, something that would change everything. It was a little past 2 a.m. when my phone vibrated on the desk beside me. I was in my tent, sipping a cup of lukewarm coffee, trying to shake off the exhaustion that had been creeping up on me for the past few days. The rest of the team was spread across the site, each member either working or resting, as we prepared for yet another long night of digging. I glanced at the screen, expecting it to be a routine update or a message from one of my colleagues. Instead, it was an alert from one of the motion sensor cameras we had set up at the entrance to the dig site. The camera had detected movement, but the feed it displayed was unnerving. I tapped the notification, my heart skipping a beat as the screen loaded. The image was grainy, a blurry figure moving slowly towards a sealed chamber we had been studying. At first, it appeared to be a trick of the light, maybe a shadow, or the result of some animal wandering through the site. But as the figure came closer, it became unmistakable, a person or something that resembled a person. The figure wore a tattered cloak that obscured most of its form, and it was dragging something heavy behind it. A chilling sense of dread crawled up my spine as I watched the figure pause, seemingly aware of the camera's presence. It stood there for a long moment, staring directly into the lens, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The glow was unnatural, too faint to be human, too unsettling to be anything other than a warning. My breath caught in my throat, and for a split second, I considered the possibility that I was imagining things. But no, the feed was real. The figure was real. And as the camera's motion sensors tracked its movement, I knew that what I was witnessing was not some ordinary event. The figure moved again, its movements jerky and unnatural, dragging the heavy object behind it. I squinted, trying to make sense of what it was pulling, but the image was too distorted to identify. My pulse raced as I frantically pressed the button to alert the team. I had to see it for myself. We couldn't let this go unchecked, not with the significance of the chamber at stake. I grabbed my flashlight and rushed to the site, my heart pounding in my chest. The other members of the team, Dr. Richards, Omar, Sophia, and Julian, were already assembling at the entrance, their faces pale, eyes wide with confusion and fear. They must have received the notification too. What the hell was that? Julian asked, his voice shaky. I don't know. I replied, my mind spinning as I fought to keep my composure. But we need to check the chamber. Now. We made our way to the entrance, the cold desert air biting at our skin. The chamber door was still sealed, just as it had been earlier that night. But something was different. The air felt heavier, charged with an unsettling energy. As we approached the door, I noticed the faint traces of what looked like claw marks along the stone, shallow but unmistakable. The hieroglyphs, those ancient symbols we had spent so much time deciphering, had changed overnight. New markings had appeared, surrounding the door in a chaotic pattern, almost as if they had been scratched into the stone by some unseen force. I leaned in closer, my breath fogging up the surface of the stone as I studied the marks. Look, Dr. Richard said, pointing to the new symbols. That's not part of the original inscription. It wasn't here before. I nodded, my stomach sinking. The hieroglyphs now spoke of a watcher, a curse being bound to guard the tomb for eternity. There were warnings about disturbing its slumber, about unleashing something that could never be put back. My pulse quickened as I read the inscription aloud, the words heavy with ancient dread. This isn't good, Omar whispered, his voice trembling. I could feel the weight of the curse pressing down on us, but my curiosity, my drive to uncover the secrets of this place, overpowered my fear. We had come this far. We couldn't stop now. Ignoring the warnings, we opened the chamber door. The hinges creaked, as if protesting the disturbance, and the air inside was thick with the scent of earth and decay. We stepped into the darkness, our flashlights cutting through the blackness as we made our way deeper into the tomb. The stone walls were covered in more hieroglyphs, but they were unlike any we had seen before, more intricate, more detailed, as though they told a story we were not meant to understand. We were silent, each of us lost in our thoughts, our minds racing with the implications of what we had just uncovered. It was when we reached the inner chamber that the first signs of trouble began to surface. At first, it was small things, a headache, a strange dizziness that seemed to come and go without warning. But soon, the symptoms grew more severe. Dr. Richards collapsed, clutching his head as if in pain. Sophia's eyes glazed over, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Julian was the first to notice that the air had become unbearably thick, as though something was pressing down on us from all sides. "Something's wrong," Julian said, his voice strained. We need to leave." But it was too late. By morning, the symptoms had worsened. Dr. Richards had a high fever, his body racked with violent chills. Sophia muttered incoherently, her eyes darting around as though she was seeing something that wasn't there. We all began to experience strange, vivid hallucinations, visions of the cloaked figure from the night before, standing just beyond our tent, watching us with those glowing eyes. It was as if it followed us into the tomb, its presence lingering in every corner of our minds. Each time I closed my eyes, I could hear its dragging footsteps, and I could feel its cold gaze upon me. I knew, without a doubt, that we had unleashed something. The curse, the Watcher, it was real, and it had been waiting for us. That night, as I sat in my tent, trying to make sense of everything that happened, I heard the unmistakable sound of claws scraping against the stone again. My heart froze in my chest. I grabbed my flashlight and rushed outside, but when I reached the site, there was nothing. The chamber was silent, and then I saw it, the claw marks on my tent. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I knew what had happened. The Watcher had taken me. The next morning, my team searched the site, calling out my name, but I was gone. There were no signs of struggle, no traces of where I had gone, just the claw marks, deep and jagged, etched into the fabric of my tent, as though something had reached in, taken me, and vanished without a trace. The site was sealed. Officially, it was abandoned and my team scattered, their minds forever haunted by the events that had transpired. But the whispers persist. The stories of the Watcher, the dark figure with the glowing eyes, are told to anyone who dares to venture too close to the pyramids. And they say that one day it will return, that the curse will rise again, and the Watcher will claim more souls, just as it claimed mine. I should have known better. The warnings were clear. The carvings on the walls of the tomb screamed of doom, but I ignored them. It was my ambition, my insatiable desire to unearth something that hadn't seen the light of day for millennia. We thought we were uncovering a piece of history, but in truth, we were disturbing something much darker, far older than we could ever comprehend. I still remember the day we discovered the sarcophagus. The Valley of the Kings, as always, was a silent witness to our digging, the ancient tombs standing like silent sentinels, carved from rock and time. The air was thick with dust, the heat unbearable, and yet there was an electric sense of excitement in the camp. Dr. Amira Khaled, a brilliant archaeologist, led our team. She was a woman driven by her passion for uncovering forgotten past, a woman who would stop at nothing to bring the secrets of the tombs to light. When Malik, Amira's assistant, called out to her in that low voice of his hand pointing to the sarcophagus lying half buried in the sand, I felt a surge of excitement, quickly followed by a tinge of dread. The markings on the stone were unlike any I had seen before, symbols that twisted and writhed as if they had a life of their own. The hieroglyphs were garbled, too ancient even for my seasoned eye. And yet, despite the warning signs, Amira smiled. The discovery was too important to ignore. "We must open it," she insisted, her eyes alight with the fire of discovery. The others were hesitant, but she overruled them with a confidence I couldn't quite challenge. And so we did. We opened the tomb. The air that rushed out from within the sarcophagus was cold, biting, unnatural. It made my skin crawl as if the very air was carrying the curse of whatever had been entombed for centuries. I could feel the eyes of the past upon us, watching us, judging us. The sarcophagus itself was empty, but there, within the dark confines of the tomb, was something worse than we could have imagined. A symbol, etched in the stone floor, seemed to pulse with an eerie glow, and the silence that followed was deafening. That night, we all tried to sleep. We tried to pretend that nothing had happened, that the ancient curse was just superstition, just the fanciful beliefs of an era long past. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been unleashed, something that had been waiting for us to open that tomb. I was still awake when the scream started. At first, it was just one voice, distant, faint, but it quickly became louder, a man's voice filled with terror and agony. I shot up from my cot and rushed outside, only to find one of the guards, Ahmed, running across the camp. His body was naked, covered in dirt, his eyes wild and unblinking, his face contorted in sheer madness. He was screaming, his voice breaking as he clawed at his skin, his hands digging into his flesh as if something were crawling underneath it. He screamed about beetles, about insects burrowing into his skin, and before we could even approach him, he collapsed to the ground in a heap of twitching limbs, blood streaming from his open wounds. He was dead within seconds. I could hear Malik behind me, whispering frantically, his voice quivering with fear. "This is the curse, it's real." I didn't want to believe him. It had to be some kind of shock, some fevered hallucination. But as I looked around the camp, my stomach churned with unease. The night was alive with whispers, too many voices murmuring in strange guttural tones, voices I couldn't understand, voices that didn't belong. They were speaking in ancient Egyptian, words we had only begun to decipher. It was as if the tomb had not just been a resting place, but a conduit, a gateway to something terrible, something ancient. The next day, things only worsened. I found another crew member, Nadia, staring out into the desert, her eyes blank, her body swaying in a trance. She mumbled phrases I couldn't quite catch, but the tone was wrong, foreign, like she was speaking in the very tongue of the pharaohs. Her lips moved in a rhythmic pattern, and when I touched her shoulder, her head snapped around to face me with a look that was devoid of recognition. She wasn't Nadia anymore. She was something else, something from that tomb, from that cursed place. It wasn't long before Malik himself began to change. The transformation was slow at first, almost imperceptible, but over the course of a few days, I watched him unravel. He would spend hours staring into the empty sarcophagus, muttering phrases in a language no one could decipher. He had always been a quiet, reliable assistant, but now he was becoming something else entirely. I tried to talk to him, tried to bring him back to his senses, but he wouldn't respond. He would just gaze into the tomb, his face pale and drawn, as if he were seeing something no one else could. Something that spoke to him, beckoned him. It was when I found him standing by the tomb, muttering incessantly, that I realized how deep the curse ran. I tried to shake him out of it, to bring him back to reality, but his eyes, those eyes, had become hollow, lifeless, as if the spark of who he once was had been completely consumed. The expedition was called off soon after that. No one could stand the madness that was spreading like wildfire through the camp. The crew members were too terrified, their minds unraveling under the pressure of whatever had been awakened in that tomb. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. I told myself that the curse was nothing but superstition, that it was a psychological response, a breakdown triggered by stress. I had to stay, to finish what we had started. I thought if I could just find some logical explanation, some rational reason for everything that happened, I could put an end to the madness. But deep down I knew that I was lying to myself. The worst came days later when I found the footage from the camp surveillance cameras. It showed me, myself, wandering the desert in the dead of night, my body torn and ragged, my clothes in tatters. My eyes were wide with fear, but I couldn't remember anything about that night. The cameras caught me walking aimlessly through the sand, screaming about the sand devouring my body. The footage didn't show me running, didn't show me escaping. It showed me walking straight into the desert as though something invisible were calling to me, urging me forward. I don't know how I ended up out there. I don't know how I survived. But I do know this. When I came back to the camp, the others were gone. The tents were empty, the equipment abandoned in a hasty departure. And the tomb, the tomb was sealed again. Now, the site is abandoned, left to rot under the sun, but the whispers remain. Locals tell of strange, wandering shadows near the site. Figures moving in the corners of their eyes, disappearing when they look directly at them. They speak of cries, screams carried by the wind at night, echoes of agony from the tomb. I don't know if it's real or if it's just my mind, unraveling bit by bit, but I feel it deep inside my bones. The curse, the presence of something ancient, something powerful, is still there, and it's waiting for someone else to open that tomb, to disturb its slumber. I know what I've become. I can feel in my blood the curse. I'm becoming like them, the wanderers, the ones who can never find peace, the ones who are lost, forever doomed to hear the whispers of the Pharaoh's wrath, to feel the sands of time slipping through our fingers until there is nothing left but madness.